You,
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Wally.
Good morning. Years ago, I remember hearing a very funny routine by Jackie Mason about how every Jewish person has access to all these fancy specialists when it comes to medicine. My guy is so important, such a famous specialist, it takes 3 months to get an appointment with him. Oh yeah, well, my guy is a famous specialist, it takes 6 months to get an appointment with him. And the third guy said, well, my guy is so famous, you can never get an appointment to see him. A very funny routine, but it points out to the fact that the practice of medicine today is very, very different from what it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. Increased specialization, increased costs, hospitals taking over private practices, paperwork involved with insurance. A lot of doctors are fed up with it. A lot of them are retiring early because they lose control. I remember yesterday, as a matter of fact, I went to see an ENT yesterday, and I had to fill out a whole big form, your entire medical history. And I said, don't you have it on the my chart from Englewood Hospital? He says, oh, no, I'm not part of Englewood. I'm independent. Because they don't want to be, the hospitals are buying up practices. So there has arisen over the past number of years a practice called concierge medicine, where many doctors are limiting the number of patients that they see, and you charge an upfront fee. It could vary from several $100s to $25,000. And it cuts down the number of patients that a doctor will see, but not necessarily his income. And he guarantees that you'll be seen, you'll be given top-notch care. You won't have to wait in a waiting room for a half an hour till a doctor sees you.
Except they're not specialists. So I remember when my endocrinologist in Dallas
Right.
was switching to become concierge, and I really did like him. But it's like if I needed an ENT, if I needed a dermatologist, or I needed something else, he couldn't do it.
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
So I'm paying $2,000 for him, but I still need other people.
The system is not obviously perfect for everybody, but for the physician, it works out. We have to take into consideration the fact that becoming a physician is a very expensive process. Doctors have tremendous loans to pay back if they go through medical school, and if they specialize, and they want to, get back their investment, and if they can't make what they consider a respectable living, then why go into the field altogether? So, and plus the amount of paperwork for insurance that doctors have to go. Many doctors' offices hire people specifically just to work on insurance forms. And it's crazy. And sometimes insurance doesn't always pay on time. My mechutin recently retired because he was overwhelmed by the administrivia, if I can call it that, of being a doctor. There was a time last year where he didn't get reimbursed from Medicare for 3 or 4 months. And he had to shoulder all those expenses by himself, including running the office. And he said, I can't do it anymore. So he retired. Now he'll be a consultant, and he'll do whatever teaching he does and so forth. But he said it's just simply not worth it. So the concierge or boutique medicine addresses this by charging a fee. And the average doctor sees between 3,000 and 4,000 patients. Now, you think it's a lot, but when you consider his day, they have multiple waiting rooms, and in each room you got people waiting for you, and you go in and out, and you can see, 20 people a day, maybe more. It's like a turnstile. You go in and out. Concierge medicine, that number drops down to between 3,000 and 4,000. But they make up for it by paying high fees in order to be seen by the doctor whenever they have a little sniffle, or they have a sore throat, or for a wellness checkup, whatever it might be. He's your guy to go to. Now, the question is, what is the halakhic, or what are the halakhic considerations for a doctor to be in that type of a practice? Does a doctor have a right to limit the number of patients, halakhically? I'm not talking about morally or legally, but does the doctor have a right, al-pi halacha, to limit the number of patients that he sees and to say, I'm only seeing these people, nobody else? And what about emergencies? What does the halakha have to say about that?
Well, are you saying that this type of doctor is better service?
Well, it gives you more individualized service. Better is a qualitative judgment. I can't say one doctor is better than the other. But if I have 3,000 versus 20,000 patients to see,
No, but it's not a better doctor, it's a better service.
better level of service, right? Because
So it's better service, so sometimes.
it's definitely, when I call, I'll get an appointment to see him tomorrow or today even.
So there's a trade-off sometimes.
Yeah, but again,
Well, why does halacha even come into it? It's up to the individual. You want to use that doctor or not?
correct. However, what I want to analyze is, first of all, what is the halakhic imperative for doctors in general? What is the biblical source to allow us to practice medicine? Yeah.
Here, doctors, they practice, and they say they don't take any more patients on.
Yeah,
That's the same difference.
there are some doctors that don't take new patients. There are some doctors that won't accept insurance.
But you only take certain insurance.
Yeah,
So that's already selective.
correct. There are people who are, they see certain, my wife goes to a certain specialist in New York City who doesn't accept insurance. It's expensive, very expensive, but she likes that doctor and whatever. So, but the question is, first of all, what is the biblical mandate of practicing medicine? First of all, Christian scientists, lahavdil, don't believe in doctors or medicine because God will heal, right? They have faith in God, God will heal. What is Judaism's position on the practice of medicine? There are many, so the Gemara has a number of different sources. V'rapo yurape is the classic one. The Torah says that people shall be engaged in the healing process. And the Gemara says, mitan nitain reshus, permission is given for doctors to practice medicine. There are other interpretations that I find fascinating. You have to take care of yourself, and if you can't, someone else will. The most fascinating interpretation in the Gemara is that the practice of medicine is related to Hashavas Aveda, Hashevosolo, returning a person back to their prior status of good health. Fascinating. It's like considering something that if you lost something, and I find it, I have an obligation to return it to you. If you are ill and I'm in a position to heal you, I have an obligation to return you to good health. Fascinating
Wally.
interpretation, yeah.
What does Allah say with regard to a doctor who gives a person the wrong medicine and the person bleeds to death?
Okay, if you practice bad medicine, then you're culpable. I mean, if you make a mistake, there's a fascinating halacha in Yeridea. And I came across this in learning Maseches Makos, where it talks about a shliach bezdin who administers lashes, and in the process of administering lashes, the person dies. So is he culpable or not for killing that person? He's exercising a function. So the halacha is in Yeridea that the guy who's a shliach bezdin is potter medina adam, but chai medina shemayim. Whereas we don't do anything to him, but Hashem will take care of him. And on the spot, the Ramah adds, if a surgeon loses a patient on the operating table, he tried his best to save him. Potter medina adam, v'chayav medina shemayim. The doctor makes a mistake, and a person dies or suffers because of it. If the doctor was doing the best that he could, He's exempt from punishment in this world, but God will take care of him later. So those, and then there's a whole discussion of who can become a doctor, or training, and so forth and so on. But you are responsible for the level of skill that you're practicing. And if you don't have the right talent and right experience, you shouldn't be practicing. Correct. But that's why, one of the most neglected areas of Shulchan Aruch is Choshen Mishpat. Business relationships, business practices, obligations of people to other people. And for some reason, this is not studied very well. The famous joke, a guy gets a book full of blank pages. What's the title of the book? Jewish Business Ethics. It's not a joke, but Choshen Mishpat is a very serious area of Shulchan Aruch. And in fact, people who study Choshen Mishpat get a separate smicha. Your regular smicha doesn't cover Choshen Mishpat. There's a separate smicha that covers people that want to become dayanim. So again, there are a lot of halachas about doctors, and there are a lot of interesting comments. This is going to take us a long time. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the bigger question here is, in some of these big medical practices today, the doctors are being directed that they have to turn over so many patients in an hour.
Yeah.
And that might lead to basically a neglect of not getting into the patients.
Which is why many doctors have opened up boutique practices, because these practices are owned by the hospitals. That the doctors are earning a salary now. Most private practices are no longer private. Yeah, but the hospitals have bought up all these medical groups, and they're paying doctors a salary, and it's to their advantage to see as many people as they can, and they pop from one room to the other. And they really give you the time that you really need. The Gemara has a lot of interesting comments about doctors. On the one hand, a doctor who doesn't charge for his services is worthless. You have to have pride in your practice, what you do. On the other hand, a physician who refuses to treat someone who can't afford to pay goes to hell. Toshe barofim legehenim, Gemara says. That ultimately, but again, in between those two statements, you have a lot of discussion about doctors legitimately being able to charge because you are either returning them back to health or there's a biblical obligation to heal, many different sources. The halachos, there's so many halachos regarding doctors. If you take an oath, a neder, to avoid giving benefit to somebody, I don't like you, so I'm going to take a neder that have nothing to do with you whatsoever. However, if I'm a doctor and you need medical care, I have to take care of you. Because you can't be masna masha kasav b'Torah. You can't take a neder against a biblical mandate. And the Bible says you have to heal those who are ill. So there are a lot of side halachos there. And the question is, if I'm practicing boutique medicine and a person comes to me who's not in my practice, who is an emergency situation, I have to heal. I have to take care of that person. I can't say you're not in my practice. Again, depends on the severity of it, an emergency issue. There are a lot of gray areas here, but basically, boutique medicine would generally doesn't accept walk-ins. If you're not on the list, you can't just walk into the office for an appointment. If you happen to be driving by and there's an auto accident, that's a different story. Yeah.
So just to go back to something, you have to take anybody, which is what they're faced with in Israel all the time. When, there could be a terrorist attack. The terrorist, unfortunately, was not killed. And, they have to help him.
Yeah.
And, but what about, does halacha say anything about a patient who sees a doctor coming in, whether it's a female or someone that looks like just out of medical school, or they find out it's a different religion or a different race, and the patient says, I want another doctor. Is that halachically okay?
Well, again, a doctor can refuse to see a patient.
Or can a patient refuse to see, can a patient ask for a different doctor?
Yeah, why not?
Based on, no, if they specifically say, you know, I want a female, or I want someone that doesn't look like you're 12. or,
Yeah,
you know.
assuming it's not an emergency, absolutely. Absolutely. Since doctors are basically, it's a business. When you come down to it, it's a business, and they are in business for themselves. And if they weren't able to make a good living, they wouldn't go into the field in the first place. Putting aside all the altruistic reasons why people become doctors, you can make a good living as a doctor. Whether you work for a hospital on a salary, or whether you are in practice for yourself, but a boutique doctor also gives you a more relaxed lifestyle. There are some doctors who, you know, work morning till night, and the Rambam is a classic example. The Rambam was a doctor, and he writes a letter. Shmuel Ibn Tibon translated a lot of his work from Arabic into Hebrew, and he wanted to come visit him to go over some of the translations face to face. The Rambam says, he lives in France, says, it's a tough trip by boat, don't come, because you're not going to be able to spend time with me. And he describes what his day is like. He was the physician to the Sultan in Egypt. So in the morning, he goes to the palace and he takes care of the Sultan and the harem and every other medical problems that they have there. And then he comes back to his office in the afternoon. He has his one meal a day that he could probably gulp down. And then people line up in front of his house or his tent or whatever. And they're coming lines and lines to the point where he says, I'm lying on my back writing prescriptions. I'm so exhausted. That was the Rambam. Most doctors don't follow that kind of a schedule. Some do, perhaps, but again, it's very tiring. When a doctor gets a call in the middle of the night from a patient, now again, what do most doctors have? An answering service. And the answering service will determine if it's an emergency or not. If it's an emergency, call 911. Or they'll pass it on. Now, the nature of the call. But boutique medicine, unless he's one of your patients, he's not going to respond. Or she, the case may be. A bigger question, since it's a biblical mandate to cure those who are sick, in the same way that it's a biblical commandment to teach Torah, are you allowed to charge a fee for seeing patients? The same way, can you charge a fee for teaching Torah? And the answer is technically no. However, the Gemara understands that people cannot live on air. So the term that is used is schar batola. The money that you could have earned doing a regular job, and you interrupt that job to sit on a bezdin, you interrupt that job to do an operation, that's the fee that you can collect. Now, in the Gemara, for example, every rabbi that's quoted in the Talmud had a job. Every one of them. There were no official titles as rabbi until the Middle Ages. In the Talmud, everyone worked a job. They were tailors, they were woodcutters, they were all kinds of different jobs they had. Beer merchants. Papa was a very wealthy beer merchant. They had jobs. If they had to sit on a bezdin or teach a class, then they were compensated for what they would have earned at their regular job. And that's the technicality. It's called schar batola. But doctors don't have another job. That is their job. So again, the poskim allow you to collect a fee, otherwise you wouldn't have doctors. And this type of machlokes and discussion, even among contemporary poskim, for example, if a situation arises, as it has in Israel, are doctors allowed to go on strike? Because the doctors, most of the, it's like socialized medicine in Israel. Most of the doctors are on a salary. Can they go on strike? Can they refuse services to people in order to get better salaries? And it was an interesting discussion. A number of the poskim allowed them to go on strike, except for the most severe emergencies. They would send people to hospitals, but they allowed it because they understood that a doctor has to make a living. So again, the technical details of it, people would not dedicate themselves to the study of medicine if they couldn't make a living. By the same token, the question comes up, can a doctor take a vacation? I have patients waiting for me. So the usual practice is you have a covering doctor. Fine. What if I'm taking a nap? What if I had a busy day in the operating room and I'm exhausted and somebody comes with an emergency situation? Am I obligated to get up from my nap that I so richly deserved to see that patient?
Depends how awake you can be.
Huh?
Depends how awake you can be.
Okay. But again, do you have to respond to calls at night or while you're on vacation? And again, there are a lot of, it depends situations. If you're the only doctor in the town, it's a different. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have more than one doctor in every town. But there were situations, and there are situations in smaller communities where there is only one doctor in town. And that's a tremendous, tremendous burden. And the halacha makes a difference between emergencies and urgent situations versus the normal well checkup and so forth. Refusing to see a patient because he can't afford to pay is a serious issue. And again, most poskim would say that you shouldn't be refusing to see a patient because of that, certainly if it's an emergency. But again, the whole issue of boutique medicine raises a lot of questions. A related question, the Chafetz Chaim raises the issue. He says, a community must have a fund to take care of indigent sick people, to pay for the doctor's care. Because you can't expect the doctor to see everybody all the time. And if the community does not have a fund for poor, sick people, then you violate lo samod al dam riyach. You're literally standing on the blood of your neighbor. So the poskim address a lot of fascinating situations. Except for emergency cases, legally, a patient can choose where he practices and who he sees, technically. Whether it's ethical to do that is a separate question. But again, we want to have good doctors. Patients cannot be abandoned by doctors. And if you do shift from a regular practice to a concierge practice, you have to transition your patients to make sure they get the care that they need. Not everybody can afford to belong to a boutique practice. The advantages are terrific. If I have a sniffle, I call my doctor and he's going to see me today or tomorrow or write me a prescription. He's not going to say, talk to my nurse and she'll book you in 2 weeks to get an appointment. There are some doctors, when you call for a physical, they'll say, well, we're busy for the next 3 months. Like, I'll fit you in, in August. Yeah.
When we were growing up, everybody had a family doctor.
Yes.
And if you had a sniffle, you called the doctor and told him, and he called him a prescription. If it was something that he felt that he should see you, he would say, come in and I'll fit you in. So back then, everybody had a concierge doctor.
The practice of medicine then was I still remember, I have a very vivid memory. I was sick in my bed with, I don't know, a cold or whatever it was. And the doctor came to my bedside. He made a house call. I remember as if it was yesterday. I was 6 years old. and he came to the house and he examined me in the house. Who does that today? Yeah, so it's something new. Doctors on call that make house calls. It's a new, a novel approach to medicine. House calls, yeah.
Wally, if a doctor is practicing medicine in a lot of life and death situations, performing operations and everything, this happens to be that he has a very high rate of patients that now die from procedures that he performs. So luckily speaking, can the rabbis remove him? Because I know you still have to deal with the medical side of it. Saying in the community, can they come out and say, do not use this stuff?
Just don't go.
Uh,
No, I'm just saying, but luckily speaking.
They would have to consult with their attorneys first, but I would say yes. You can advise patients not to see a certain doctor, but again, the legalities of it are kind of murky. Preventing a person from earning a living, bad-mouthing somebody, casting aspersions on whether they may be true or not.
Any field, it's with any field.
Yeah, it's true in any field. But again, concierge medicine has not yet reached a level in America where it's regulated in any way, either by the AMA or by the government. At some point, it might. Medical care today is a very, very hot topic. Doctors are entitled to make a living. And how do you balance that versus a patient's need to be seen? Especially if there are some serious illnesses involved. But a doctor is like any other job. I mean, it's not like any other job, but it is like any other job. And a doctor is essentially, unless he's affiliated with a hospital where he's an employee, that's a whole different situation. A doctor can choose who he wants to see, and he can limit the number of patients that he has. He has that right, especially if there are other doctors in the town. If he's the only doctor in town, that's a whole other situation where he has a responsibility. But if you are not the only doctor in town, if you are not the only specialist in that particular area, then you have leeway to determine who you see halakhically, unless it's an emergency. You have that right. Whether it's correct ethically, morally is a separate discussion that we're not going to have today. But legally, halakhically, a doctor has a right to earn a living. And if by limiting the number of patients and charging them a fee, in order to do that, it's what we call zenene v'zenene. It's beneficial to both sides. The doctor has a normal workday, and the patients can get seen whenever they want us to be seen. So it works out. The only problem is sometimes when you have emergency situations, and that's a gray area, and doctors have been known to refuse to see patients in emergency situations, which is a very difficult scenario. Go see somebody else. Or if a doctor is on vacation or on his lunch hour. These are the gray areas, but basically the halacha recognizes the doctor's needs to make a living, but at the same time, it makes it imperative to take care of sick people as well. How you balance those things is the stuff of machlokas poskim. Yes?
I have a question, this has nothing to do with the halacha.
Everything has to do with halacha.
Years ago, doctors were associated with a hospital. In other words, no, but before you would only go to a hospital if your doctor had privileges.
Correct.
And now
You don't have that.
Exactly. You just go, and then your doctor, if he's not kasher in any way to that hospital, he can still get your records, if you want them.
Right, but if he isn't affiliated with the hospital, he doesn't have rights to visit you in the hospital. Whoever's on duty in the hospital will be your doctor while you're staying there.
He can come and say hello, but he can't.
He can come in as a visit, yeah. He can come in as a visitor, but he can't come into,
But you can still have, request your chart, your
Yeah,
files or
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
sent.
but again, the practice
How
of,
did that change?
sorry,
How did that change?
is it what?
How did that change? Like,
It changed because the practice of medicine has become big business. And hospitals are now operated as chains. Most hospitals belong to a chain of hospitals that are operated for profit. And the hospitals are buying up medical practices wholesale. And most doctors who are affiliated with hospitals are employees of the hospital being paid a salary by the hospital. And that's why you have doctors seeing so many patients a day. You know,
Hospital doctors, you call hospital doctors, call hospital doctors.
whatever they call it, but you'll have a doctor's office with 5 waiting rooms with patients waiting to see you, and you go from one to the other, it's just round robin. And that way you could see, 30, 40 patients a day, if not more.
Rabbi,
That'll be the next step. Yes, Jay.
so thank you. So fascinating topic. So I wonder, and I don't know if this is Kedai to talk about today, how the doctors stand up versus pharmaceutical companies.
Well, they're all, they're all intermingled.
Right. Normally we wouldn't think.
Pharmaceutical companies
Yeah.
offer all types of tangible incentives to doctors to prescribe their particular medication. And ethically, it's a serious issue. So pharmaceutical companies will take doctors on these lavish vacations to promote their medication, give them all types of gifts, get them to use it, and a doctor will prescribe a certain medication, and it raises a lot of ethical issues. The medication may be fine, it may be a good medication, but there might be another one out there that doesn't have the ability to spread around money to doctors to use them. I mean, big pharma is also big business today, and it's not as regulated as it could be. I don't know what this administration is going to do about that, but drug prices are, again, to a certain extent, you have to recoup your research to produce those medications, but after a while, those research costs have been recouped many times over, and the price of medication should come down. In some cases, they have. In some cases, we had to go to court to get those prices down. Insulin being a classic example of that. They were charging 20 times what it costs to make the insulin. And I think recently they cut down that cost significantly. But other medications, so big pharma, hospitals, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. And on the one hand, we don't want to see too much government regulation, but sometimes the government may have to step in to protect the consumer. Again, we're talking about normal cases. Emergency is a whole separate issue. But clearly the halacha is not opposed to concierge medicine, assuming there are other doctors to take care of patients who need the care. It may not be the same quality care, simply based on sheer numbers, but hopefully doctors, even though they may be salaried, can provide proper medical care for all those that need it. Again, one fascinating takeaway from all of this is that the biblical sources for the practice of medicine, whether it's v'rapo yurape, whether it's v'nishmartem ma'od l'nafshel seichem, you have to take care of yourself. But the one that I find most fascinating is v'hashivosolo, returning a person to his prior status, similar to returning a lost object to somebody. And I think that is one of the more fascinating interpretations of the obligation to heal. But hopefully,
Wally,
yes,
do the same rules apply to psychiatrists? For
yes.
example, say a patient is seeing a psychiatrist for a long period of time, and the
Yes.
psychiatrist knows that he's not going to change this person, but the person depends on the psychiatrist, so he keeps going. So does he have an obligation to keep treating this patient?
Well, again, if the psychiatrist decides to become a concierge psychiatrist, Then he has to do the best that he can to try, if the person can't afford his fee, then he has to try to transition him to somebody else, as difficult as that may be. Is it morally right or ethically right? Perhaps not. But it's a business.
For sure.
It's a business. So hopefully we'll all be healthy and not require too many medical visits.
Amen.
Any questions, comments, critiques? Okay,
Wally,
yes,
one quick little incident. I had a good friend who was a dermatologist, and he was well known throughout the world. He visited and gave lectures. So I told him one day, Charlie, why don't you just put these lectures on a tape, and I'll take it, I'll travel, you can stay home and we'll split the proceeds. He said, no, he was making too much money this way.
right. All right, everybody stay healthy out there.
Amen.
Thank you,
Scott, thank you.
Good day. I got Alamichya today, right? Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam Alamichya v'al kalo v'al tnuvas hasad v'al eretz chemet tova urchava sheretz tzitza v'nechat olav aseinu lechol mitriyov v'nespal b'tuva. Rachenu Eloheinu Yisrael Amecha Yerushalayim B'rech v'Atziyah Mishkan K'vodego v'Zbechach v'Hecholecha V'nei Yerushalayim Yirakosh B'Hiru V'Mein V'Halenu L'Solcha V'Samkein B'Vinyana V'Nocham Mitriyov v'Nespal b'tuva B'rech v'Lev Kedusha Torah Ki atah Adonai Tov v'Meiti V'Kol v'Noda L'Cha Al Haaretz V'Al Hamichya Baruch atah Adonai Al Haaretz V'Al Hamichya. Okay. Yeah. It used to be a doctor.
I've heard that some concierge doctors, it's not just the doctor himself, but they actually make a private practice with all different fields.
Yeah.
And that, and everybody in that group is concierge. So if you need a specialist.
Yeah.
You go right in.
That's right, that's right. It's a good business.
Okay, then.
Thank you for your kind note. My wife enjoyed it very much.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day.
Ay, that's- oh, thank you. Thank you.
Leftovers from
Okay, we will take it. Is this the shimmel from?